had closed. It has not, and we really want to hear from you. We have a sense when we talk to you, but we're trying to represent all of you, and that's hard. So unless we hear from you, we don't know what's on your mind. So take a minute, if you would, please, and look at the survey and answer the questions. It really is valuable. Let's see. I want to talk about, Alyssa, are you able to put up the accelerated timeline? But, okay. All right. Well, that's not great.
You want to try this mic?
Okay, here we go. How many of you are familiar with the accelerated ordinance that's in place by the city? For the LID. Okay, so this is important. We were going to have it projected, so it's not up there now, so don't feel like you have to memorize all of this, but I'm going to try to slowly and broadly explain it. If you are asleep at the wheel, this will happen without you. December 16th, it's an assembly meeting. It's our first opportunity for a public comment. That is the last time that the assembly can make amendments to the ordinance. The ordinance is to impose an LID, a local improvement district, on 466 homes that have been determined to be in the flood zone. For 4 of those homes, there's a $50,000 fee because their riverbanks need work, but for the remainder of us, it's $8,000. After that meeting, the week of the 16th, the city will mail out a certified letter that tells you you are one of the 466, and you have an opportunity to object. If you don't object, you are saying yes. So if you're not paying attention, or if you're in the Christmas spirit or the Hanukkah spirit and you're not looking at your mail and you let 30 days go by, the decision will be made without you. So our goal is not to tell you how to vote, but is to tell you to pay attention. In January, the city has scheduled a neighborhood meeting. That's after the first public hearing and after you've already received your certified letter. February 3rd is another assembly meeting, and it's the second opportunity for public comment. By then, the ordinance results will be in, and they should give us an indication whether it's a pass or fail. The answer can be in sooner if enough people respond. So they need 51% of the 466 to say no, and then it fails. And it could fail right away, but we won't know until February. The assembly can overturn the citizen decision by 8 unanimous votes. And then March 3rd, the ordinance is in effect, and April 3rd is the last day for a legal challenge to the assessment roll. So we will have this information on our website. You can find it with the city. You have to go into the assembly meeting minutes and look at the LID. But I wanted to be sure that you're aware that there's a lot happening, and if you're not sure, you need information, you can reach out to us and we can tell you where on our website you can find some of the answers. But tonight, we wanted to bring up some of these subject matters to give you an opportunity to ask questions and understand more fully what this is really all about. At this time, I think it would be good if Nika and Victor, would you like to come up? FEMA would like to make a few just important time frame announcements. This is, I call them by their first name because they're wonderful. This is Nika and Victor.
Hi there, Nika Herford with FEMA. I am the Individual Assistance Director for our Individual Assistance Programs. I work in our regional office out of Washington State, and I have been here since right after the declaration on October 16th. I see a lot of familiar faces. Thank you so much for being so kind and coming into our Disaster Recovery Center at the Mendenhall Library on several occasions for many of you. And I wanted to just see quickly, is there anyone here who was impacted by the flooding in August that did not apply with FEMA? Anyone? Okay. How about the state of Alaska? Anyone here that did not apply with the state of Alaska? How many of you did apply with the state of Alaska as well? Okay. We work very closely, obviously, with the state. They come in very quickly to provide assistance. But by state administrative code, once there is a federal declaration, they have to cease all processing and let us come in and see what we can do to bring the federal dollars to the individuals. And this is all good news for Alaska. It's very unique to have a state IA program. So we're working closely with the state. So, couple things. We are in town at the library in our center until December 16th. We hope to see you there. If you have received a letter from FEMA, you have questions, you have additional information to provide to FEMA because we've requested it, or you have estimates for repairs that you've done that you'd like to make sure that we excuse me, consider, please come see us. We can also help you set up an online account for when we leave town and we're not here to accept your documents in person so that you can check your case with us. This is really important. It is extremely important, and it is a requirement for you to appeal with us for more money if you feel like you need more before you can go back to the state for consideration. So everyone, if you have additional expenses that you feel that FEMA didn't cover, we will look at your appeal, and if we can help you with what you've provided, then we will. If you get denied, then you'll have an opportunity to go back to the state. So please keep in touch with us. When we do leave town, we will maintain our Alaska call center. The program lasts for 18 months from the date of the declaration. So you do have 18 months to continue to avail yourselves of resources from FEMA. April 10th, 2026 for the Individuals and Households program. If you had a car, anyone have a car damaged in the room from the flood? I see one back there. Have you come and seen us? Have you gotten assistance? Good deal. That's the way we hope it will go. Please spread the word. I think you'll find our staff to be friendly, and we know that you all are. We love this community. And a few other things I would say. We've had 270 registrations. Of that, 196 have been approved for financial assistance from FEMA. For $2.95 million, we still are processing cases, so that number will continue to go up. I can't stress enough to please check your correspondence from us in your online account. If you did get issued a request for additional information, please come see us if you have questions. You can call our Alaska Help Center. We have wonderful staff here in the room. Dahlia, Inyabong, we have Mark and Tanya with mitigation, for individual mitigation. And there are other programs, disaster legal services, disaster unemployment, that we definitely want you to learn more about, and we have information on the back table. So I'm going to turn it over to Victor from Small Business Administration, and then I can answer questions later.
Hello, Vic Peralta with the Small Business Administration. I want to let you know that we are going to extend our stay here in Juneau. We're going to stay here until Friday, January 3rd. We're going to stay at the same location, the Millen Public Library. As of today, we've received 71 applications, 3 from businesses, the rest from homeowners. I'll be here tonight to answer any questions, general questions. If you have any personal questions or individual questions, you could just approach me and talk to you privately.
I'll say for FEMA, we are looking at looking at staff staying into, past the time that we're in the disaster center, but I don't have an answer yet from leadership. So, Debbie, thank you. Noah, thank you. Alyssa, everyone, thanks for the opportunity to be here again. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Victor and Nika. Alyssa, are you ready? I have to say that the FEMA folks have been amazing, encouraging, empathetic, patient, and really out there to try to help all of us as much as they possibly can within the confines that they're given. And so I address them by first name because I'd like them to be our friends. That they really have done a great job for us individually and for the community. Oh, are we? Okay. So Alyssa was going to talk just briefly about the webpage. We've added some really good new resources, and we want you to be aware that it's there for you. It's not like the mitigation page where it's a Facebook page that you can interact and have conversations. Our page is really to inform you and to give you an opportunity to reach out to us if you have a need, and I really mean a need. Anything within reason, except for a money tree. I don't have that, but we want to help you, and it's amazing the resources that we can access if we know what your needs are. Are you about ready, Alyssa?
I'm just going to multitask, so bear with me. I'm sharing my screen for those online because we can't put it up here. But what I'm showing is just the website, and my updates are pretty simple. I'm just adding new tabs to everything. One of the newest tabs is who we are, so it's going to talk about our board, has some information about us. It'll have more updated meeting minutes and then the meeting recordings as well. And the next tab is resources. Now, a lot of this goes to Noah and other people. I'm just posting it, but we have tons of resources, the current suicide basin level, GIS mapping. There's also FEMA resources on there, CBJ resources. There's FEMA flood mitigation success stories, and you can just click on or hover over the resources and a whole menu will drop down for you. We also have an announcements tab that will bring you to when we'll have the next meetings or other meetings like CBJ assembly meetings. I'm trying to put that information on there so you can just go to our site and find what you need. I also have another tab called Share Your Thoughts, and there's a little drop-down menu that says Discussion, and this is brand new, so if you have suggestions, you can reach out to me. I'll give my info after. But this discussion board, and I'm just going to click on it for the people on Zoom. I just have 2 topics right now, but you're able to comment on there. So it's not as interactive as Facebook, but you can share your opinions or your feelings. Obviously, don't use profanity, and if it gets out of hand, I have to monitor it. But I want there to be discussion on there, so that's why we've created it. And then, of course, we have the volunteer and request assistance, which are basically the same things as they have always been. If you want to volunteer, you can put how you'd like to volunteer, and then usually Debbie will reach out to you. And then if you need assistance, this could be anything from moving stuff in your house. Just let us know, and maybe there's somebody in the community who can help, because, again, it's neighbors helping neighbors. Let's see what else I have. I just have 2 more things. One of them is we have the Facebook page up. We're streaming right now live, so that's a really awesome thing. Thank you to Gabe Strong in the back who's doing that. So if you want to see a visual, you can go onto our Facebook page. You can also comment if you have questions, but the best thing is to be here in person. I also want to just say that we have our video up, thanks to Noah and Gabe as well. And I'm really excited because so far the views are 17,200 in 48 hours. So that's pretty amazing. And just a big thank you to our group, because a lot of us are putting money into this and putting our hearts into it. So know that we care, and this video is pretty darn important. I have only one more thing, which is emails. If you want to get updates, I have been collecting emails through the website, but I have noticed that I'm getting emails returned back to me. If you didn't get an update about this meeting, please go and put your information in again and select yes, for marketing. I won't send you marketing emails, I promise. It just allows me to send a bulk email out to everybody saying, hey, here's the meeting, instead of having to input everything into another email. If you have any questions, I'll get to your questions as quickly as I can, but my information is very simple. It's my name, Alyssa, at juneaufsa.org. Or if you want to do our general email, which is info@juneaufsa.org, I monitor both those. That's all I have, so I'm going to hand the mic back over.
All right, for those of you that don't know, I'm Noah Teschner. You can go with Noah. We were going to have a couple of speakers, Daryl from Green Street Construction and Troy from Northern Lights here in town, come on the Zoom and talk about lifting homes. It was going to be a real brief section just for you people to have an opportunity to ask some questions. They've been in town most of the week, I guess. May have come to some of your homes and given you an idea or an estimate of what it would cost. What I will share with you, since we're not going to do that because we're running a little behind because of the technical problems, is that we are working on producing a video for that as well. Sam Hatch, who's here, was interviewed, and Bob Winter, who lives on View Drive, was interviewed. They both have raised their houses previously, so we're going to try and give you kind of a firsthand look of what that looks like for Juneau residents, get you a better understanding of the process so you can make a more educated decision on whether it's something you want to do or not. They both came to my house today. I can't say enough kind things about them. It was a real enjoyable experience. I learned a lot as far as what they're going to do and how they would do it. And I don't even know if I'm going to go forward with it yet, but it's good information to have. So, any questions on lifting homes? All right. And since we don't have the screen, we're not going to play the video, right? Oh, sorry. There's 288,000 right now is where they're coming in around. So it's very different based on your specific home, its characteristics, how much space there is around it, what length beams they can get in underneath it. What other details would you add, Sam?
Primarily, one of the reasons they need to look at your house is your floor system. So if you have more than one, like my house, then you need a couple different beams. And then the next thing they're worried about is their site access, because if you're going to swing a 35-foot steel I-beam around, you need to make sure that your neighbor's shed or car or whatever isn't in the way. So they're looking at a lot of that, is which way your house is framed and how they can get those beams in, or whether they have to ship in a bunch of short 10-foot aluminum beams and then bolt them together under the house. So there's a lot of different ways to skin the cat. They know what they're doing. They're just saying, okay, what equipment do I need to bring down? And they build that, and then they bring it all down. So my house was a 25-foot beam, a 35-foot beam, and then 4 aluminum beams, just because of access.
The question was, are they offering a discount if more people sign up? And my understanding is that is the goal, to get as many people to lift as possible, because then it reduces the overall cost for everybody. What is also good about that is one of the big things that FEMA pushes, which is lift your house or get out of the way of the river. So it kind of goes in line with that. And I know that's not a solution for everybody. I know that, but you know what? Information is power, so that's why we're trying to get it out there. So. Any other questions on that? Oh, we're good on video? Okay, just a second. Tell a joke. Man, I'm losing my dad jokes.
Tell us, what is the level of the basin today?
I haven't looked at it. You can go to our website. Alyssa says you can go to the website to check the level of the basin today.
I had been going to the weather website, but that one is evidently gone to sleep.
Okay. The weather one has gone to sleep?
My understanding is that the monitoring system is down for the winter, and they'll only be able to reestablish it when the sun comes back up.
Okay,
So,
even on our website or another website?
The batteries freeze, the snow covers the solar panel, the thing only works really in the summer.
so one of the things that we were going to talk about with the lid and the opportunity for you to write letters to our delegation and our representatives is to ask for full federal funding, right? If they're gonna put those HESCOs in, it'd be really nice if it was completely paid for, so we weren't all paying $8,000. One of the things you might wanna consider including in that letter, if you choose to write one, is to also ask for funding to be earmarked for USGS and NOAA for the continued study and monitoring of the basin. All right, so I'm gonna say that one again. You might wanna include in your letter additional funding for USGS and NOAA, because USGS is who has the monitoring equipment, the majority of it up there at the basin. So they could potentially improve it further, I guess, if they had more funding, so. Two questions. Sure, if we're still working on getting the video up, let's do it. Doesn't matter, which one you want? Has anyone actually been funded by SBA since the lapse in congressional funding?
No, the funding ran out October 15th, and Congress has not replenished the fund. The expectation was that when Congress came back after Veterans Day, November 12th, they were going to pass the legislation. It didn't happen. So now the guess is December 20th, when there's a new continuing resolution, the money will show up back in the SBA fund.
Sure.
Okay. So with that December 16th deadline for having that loan in, if you've already like gotten in the system and have like a number for your loan and everything, with this lapse, are you still okay if it takes until later in December? Like you're not screwed on timing for that loan?
So if I'm understanding your question is, we just need to apply, right? To make sure that we're okay?
Right, so as long as you're in before the deadline, December 16th, there's actually a grace period, so we extend the deadline a little bit, but the published deadline is December 16th. As it stands right now, there's 14 residents that have loans that would be approved if we had the money, but we don't have the money, so we're not communicating to them that their loan is approved.
This is Nico with FEMA. It occurred to me that I didn't say that the registration deadline for FEMA assistance is December 16th. So details, but I just wanted to throw that out there.
No, let me just ask. So I should mention those 14 loans that have been approved, that would have been approved if we had the money. They're tentatively approved, meaning they're waiting for the money to be funded by Congress, but that's over $1 million, $1,028,000.
Does that answer your question? You got one?
Would that be applied to lift your house?
Would that be able to be applied to lift your home?
So the SBA loan covers the damage that occurred during the 2024 flooding. So if you didn't have any damage, then you're not eligible for a loan. And the loan amounts can be equal to the damage amount. Plus, we're going to throw in an extra 20% for mitigation.
I would like to know if zero lot attached homes can be lifted. All right, we're gonna have to follow up on that one later. I'll get that one to Daryl. All right, Sam's got info.
It all depends on the construction, and Daryl's repertoire is he's lifted anything from houses to cabins to garages to apartment complexes. So it's possible.
Nika and Victor, listen, so if I get this wrong, you can correct me. On our webpage, there's under stories, it talks about a town in Oregon that lifted their homes. And there is an opportunity with federal funds that go to the state, and then the cities competitively try to win the award. That money could come to us, grant money to help us lift our homes. It's a tough challenge because when they look at the money that is expended and the number of people served, is pretty expensive to lift your home compared to some other services. And so in the selection process, it's maybe harder to win that award. But it is a process that existed for that town and it was successful. And if you're an optimist, it's something we could try for. Did I get that right?
Enough though? Yes. Okay, anything you want to clarify or add?
Yeah. This is not my program. I work for individual assistance. That's my disclaimer. But for every disaster, a portion, 15% of what was paid out for the public assistance program, which is the infrastructure side, and individual assistance, which is for individuals, an additional 15% goes into the hazard mitigation grant program. And it is true, Debbie, you were doing so well, that the state makes the decision about where the money goes. The locals need to present projects for consideration. So that is, you did a great job.
So my understanding of that is by having more people signed up to lift your home, like we would be presenting a larger project for consideration. Okay, just making sure. I gotta dumb it down for me sometimes. Are we ready with the video? All right, let's watch it.
Like a boat. That was the only thing I could compare it to. Just start rocking.
Last year, we were sitting on our deck watching as the house came floating by.
You can hear it. It's like an explosion, or like really loud gunshots. When the trees hit the water and break up.
Juneau, Alaska. Glacier outburst floods have been happening here for over a decade.
The first flood that we saw was 2011. No one understood what was happening. A group of us got into a helicopter and we flew up and we saw Suicide Basin, and you could see evidence that it had recently drained. They're pretty clear that's where the flood had come from.
As the smaller Suicide Glacier recedes away from the large Mendenhall Glacier, it leaves behind a large basin. Water from rain and glacial melting accumulates in this basin, trapped between the Mendenhall Glacier and the mountain. When the water reaches a certain level, it builds up enough pressure to force its way underneath the Mendenhall Glacier, draining into the Mendenhall Lake and flowing into the Mendenhall River. This flow is up to 100 times the normal amount of water flowing from Mendenhall Lake into Mendenhall River. The river overflows its banks, flooding neighborhoods as it winds its way through the Mendenhall Valley.
There's thousands of houses in the Mendenhall Valley. This year, 300 houses flooded. The potential, if these floods get bigger, is thousands of houses flooding in the Mendenhall Valley. This is the entire bedroom community of Juneau.
This isn't the first time a river flooding its banks has devastated an Alaskan city.
Downtown, by the next day, by Tuesday, the water was about 4 feet deep or so in the streets right behind us.
Decades ago, in 1967, the Chena River overwhelmed the city of Fairbanks so badly that President Johnson declared it a national disaster area. The devastating scenes, cars stranded or driving through floodwaters, residents wading through knee-deep water, and boats navigating the streets, bear a striking resemblance to the flooding experienced by Juneau residents in recent years. So, what has kept Fairbanks from experiencing another flood of that magnitude? After the 1967 disaster, Congress passed the Flood Control Act of 1968.
And so after the 1967 flood, which was a real disaster, the present Chena Lakes flood project was designed and put into motion for construction.
This project involved the construction of a dam capable of releasing water through its gates to regulate the flow. It also involved building a levee preventing the kind of uncontrolled release of water that is currently happening with the Mendenhall River. Since its completion, the Juneau River and Lakes Flood Control Project has been used at least 28 times to prevent the Juneau and Tanana rivers from flooding Fairbanks. Ed Neal is a former hydrologist and surface water specialist for the USGS Alaska Science Center and the current principal scientist for Alaska Hydroscience. He says that a similar approach would be the best solution for the Mendenhall Valley.
The most viable option that would probably protect the valley into the future would be to construct some sort of flood retention basin here that backs up the level of the lake, say an additional 10 to 12 feet, to knock the flow levels down.
Methods that are focused more at the level of the lake have the added utility of not just dealing with the outburst flood that we see now, but potentially also dealing with other outburst flood hazards that might emerge up glacier as the Mendenhall Glacier continues to recede.
Although the functionality would be similar, the scale of a flood control project at Mendenhall Lake would be less than a quarter of the size of the Juneau River and Lakes Flood Control Project.
Essentially what you would have to do is create a low dam across the outlet of the lake and control the amount of water that leaves the lake. So as the lake fills, you're releasing water, but you're releasing less than 32,000 CFS. The previous computations for a 100-year flood on the Mendenhall River before these outburst floods was about 17,000 CFS. So say you could devise a flood control structure that limited the outflow of the lake to 17,000 CFS. As you're releasing 17,000 CFS, what would happen is the lake level would come up like probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 7 to 9, 10 feet. And then you would just, for the next day, the river would flow at 17,000 CFS, and then the water would recede and the lake would be right back to the same level it was. That would be an ideal situation. And that would provide the greatest protection from flooding.
But with these glacial outburst floods occurring every year, beginning work on the solution is of the utmost importance.
And what I would do is I would do the geotechnical work. I would do the feasibility studies. You don't need permits for those. They could be done by now, and they haven't been, and I just don't really understand that.
Take me down to the river where the peace won't run dry. Gather round at the river where my soul comes to life and I come alive.
test.
Okay, so we had in the initial stages a board meeting, brainstorming. We identified that getting the word out was one of the biggest problems, that there are people in downtown and Douglas that don't even know what happened. They're not even tuned in. And Noah was brilliant, said, let's do a video. And we said, yeah, and it grew. And I just want to say it's a brilliant way to tell our story. And after hours of planning and research and interviews and editing, this is the product that we have, the first product. And I really feel like it represents those of us in the flood. I really feel proud of it. I don't know what it elicited from you, but I've watched it many times, and every time the same feelings just flood up. And I want to say we thank Gabe Strong. Your work is beautiful, and your artistic storytelling is very evident. The Juneau community thanks you both for helping tell this, our shared story. We have sent this to our congressional delegation, to the governor, to all the assembly members, to the city, important people in the city, Jesse Keel, Andy Story, and to as many people as we can think of. We ask that you pass the word. This is our power, it's our voice, and I can only tell you that the next ones will be even more powerful when you hear the personal stories that talk about what we've been through. So I just applaud Noah and Gabe, and I thank you for your hard work.
Who was the narrator? That's some movie magic by Gabe right there. It's pretty cool. It's a voiceover. Yeah. So, I'll share a little bit with you about why we wanted to watch the video, and then kind of have a discussion tonight, right? As Juneau Flood Solution advocates, we really do feel like this project, this levee flood control structure project, has risen to the top of the long-term solutions that have been presented. For some obvious reasons and some less than obvious reasons, right? And so we wanted to kind of have discussion about, well, what are those other long-term solutions that have been presented? I mean, you probably are aware of them. You've heard about, what about making a drain hole, drilling through the mountain and letting the basin continually drain, right? Or let's straighten out the river, right? So why not those? Well, from what we've learned and people we've talked to, is that to drill that hole would take about 3 years. And then you would probably have somewhere around 10,000 dump truck loads of material that you were removing. Where does all that material go? And how do we get it out of there without impacting the visitors center and the tourism industry? And there's just a whole host of challenges with that option. Plus, then we're only protecting from the suicide basin release, and we're not kind of future-proofing ourselves for other potential basin releases. So use the material for the levee. Yeah, somebody else brought up, hey, well, why don't we drill it from the other side and leave the material in the basin, right? And all of those things, I love those thoughts and those ideas, but we need your help to flesh them out, all right? So one of the things that Alyssa is working on creating on the webpage is a discussion board for each one of these solutions, right? Because if you have an idea like that, we need somebody else to run with that idea and go, here's how I think you could do that. Here's how you would move the material. Here's the route you would take. Here's how many trucks you would need. Here's the approximate cost. That's the work that goes in behind the scenes for these solutions, and that's what we need help with. So it's valid. What you got, Sam?
I just wanted to highlight something real quick. Part of the reason I think Noah wants us to talk about it and to get it out there is you'd be surprised who your neighbors are. You know, one of my neighbors is apparently one of the, we could use the wrong word, geologists at the mine. So we have a lot of expertise if people just put in the time or help get us oriented towards the right kind of studies and things. So in a lot of ways, getting the word out and getting participation just from some of your neighbors may be way more helpful than you think.
The hard part is trying to capture that information and then get it out there in a way that everybody can digest it. And that's really what we're trying to do. That's why we're having these meetings.
My question is, do we still need the AmeriCorps study to do the levee in the video?
Do we still need the Army Corps of Engineers study? Yes. From the information I currently have is yes. I am not an expert in this. I am retelling information that I have received, but it sounds like yes. How long does that study need to take? That's where my personal opinion starts to come in, and I say we really need to work on cutting through some of that red tape and find ways to expedite it. What are those ways? Can it be done? Is that a reality? I don't know. But I personally believe that we can advocate for that. And that's what our group is here to do, right? So at least it never hurts to ask.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I was just wondering where the most likely place would be that they would put the dam?
So that's a great question. The route that's been proposed right now is right crossing behind the campground road, through the trees there, along the campground, up farther towards the mouth of the river, and then straight across to the Dredge Lakes areas. If you take the inundation maps that are online and you raise those all the way up, you can kind of connect the dots with a bunch of the high ground in there and draw that path that you saw in the video. That's the approximate route. That's what we think would work. That's what we think would be the smallest levee design that would be acceptable. And again, I'm not that technical guy that has the science behind it, but that seems to be the path that is consistent. So, yeah. Come to you next.
I just want to know why this city has not hired consultants, like 3 or 4 consultants, during this emergency period to look at this and have transparency with all of these suggestions. I am absolutely appalled. I thought there was 100,000 put aside, even if it was 300,000. This is an emergency, and it's costing so much money. The delays in all of this is just compounding. We might be making an error here. People may not vote for this. What's plan B? And I want to go to the assembly and ask, why aren't there consultants been hired to date to do this?
That's a great question. I don't have an answer to that. It is a fantastic question. So what can we do about it, right? What can we do about that is we can be there at the assembly meetings. We can ask those questions. They will give you 2 minutes to talk sometimes. We've talked about, well, maybe we need to have something prepared and we just need to go one after one until we get everything asked, right? I don't have the answer.
So the federal land has to have the Corps of Engineers okay on that? Okay, because I was at a different meeting and the Forest Service said they would not be in the way of building that levee at all. So I was,
So as far as the Forest Service saying they won't be in the way of the levee, it sounds like that they are open to it, right? That they're not going to stand in the way of it being built is what the information we've received is. That doesn't mean that they will forego the study process necessarily. What I understand about the study is that that's how those federal entities kind of protect themselves from the liability of a levee and of a flood control structure. So it's a big thing to work through.
on the, there's already a study that they did to put a levee there that they've already planned out to do. It's the lake walk or whatever they're going to plan. So most of the levee's already laid out in that. So that's what I'm trying to understand.
So some of that stuff does exist. The question is similar. Why hasn't it been pulled in? Why isn't it being utilized? Why aren't we getting all the right people in the room? I don't know. That's why we're here having this discussion. And what can we do about it? I'll come to you next.
The other question is an interesting one. The Forest Service is a player, Corps of Engineers is a player, but the state of Alaska owns the river. Any modification to the river has to be permitted by the state of Alaska. And I don't see anybody of the Department of Natural Resources in any of these meetings. So are they participating at all?
I have limited knowledge on that. I will tell you two things. One that I understand about that. One is that whether or not the state owns that land is, I guess, a lawsuit, from what I understand, and it has not been decided yet. If my research is telling me correctly, or do you have different information?
I retired from the Department of Natural Resources. In 1996, we did our first riverbank reinforcement. We needed to get permits. Since then, they have changed the rules, and I guess all the new people that put in riprap had to get tideland leases, and they have to pay an annual amount of money. What you're talking about, the navigability of the river, is a federal lawsuit on all Alaska rivers that the state of Alaska pursued. And so they claim that the state has ownership compared to the federal government, yet all the permitting is still going to be Alaska Department of Natural Resources, Division of Land, and they are here in Juneau. And historically, they are way, way behind in staffing. They get a permit out of them, it's taking forever, and so it's going to be interesting. So I can go by there and check to see if they are participated and how and what kind of role they see for themselves.
That's excellent information. That's the kind of help we need. And then my long-term vision for that is whatever you find out would go on that discussion board underneath, you know, this solution, and everybody would be able to reference it and see it.
My understanding on that is the city has not done any of the permitting, and when directly asked, they say, oh, we're working on it, or, you know, we'll get to it, but we haven't done it yet. And that's been their official answer in the meetings.
My comment and my question isn't to be for or against the HESCO barriers, but when I've been listening to both the last two city meetings, I feel like we're kind of getting bullied into it. The reason I say that is, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I really need clarification on this. The feeling I got was and I'm not even in the phase one, but but I have people that are desperate that are in it, and it's hard. We're all desperate, but what I want to say is they actually said if we didn't vote for the LID that we would be jeopardizing any kind of future plans for a long-range solution, and I just can't believe that that's true.
I like that you brought that up. So, yes, there were comments made like that. I think I feel similarly to you, that they were upsetting and made me angry, and I didn't think they were very well timed. Whether or not they're truthful or not, I cannot discern that yet. I don't think so personally, but I can't discern it yet. And I'm glad you brought up the HESCOs, because we have gotten feedback as Juneau FSA that we've come across like overly anti-HESCO, and that has not been our intent. What we're trying to do is really raise awareness about how the HESCOs were presented and some of the challenges that are out there with them, because we were, in my opinion, we were hearing from a salesman, right? There are known failures with those HESCOs. There are known erosion issues with the HESCOs. They have slid and tipped over, and areas have flooded. We are putting some of that information on our YouTube channel so people can go and check it out. But I think it's really important that people are aware of that, because what I'm concerned about is the community getting lulled into a false sense of security. Hey, the HESCOs went up. I don't need to do any personal mitigation. We're okay. Well, what if those HESCOs don't, what if they fail? What if the city is not successful in getting them installed all the way along the first phase that they're planning, right? What if they stop halfway? I feel like there's a lot of information we need there with the inundation maps to better predict that flow the river flow and where that water could end up. But man, if those things tip over or a hole gets drilled through them, I think we're in for a power washer of water. Just, you know, it's gonna be destructive. So we just want people to be knowledgeable about it, you know, and know what they're saying yes to, right? Personally, we don't like that it's been no HESCO, no help. That sounds like that's been what's being presented. And we're trying to encourage the city to say, well, if we don't do HESCO, here's what we can do. You know, they did talk about, hey, we could do more sandbagging, right? Well, there's a lot of other ideas too about warning systems and improvements to like the stopping the travel of the water, not allowing it to flow through the storm drains and affect other neighborhoods and stuff like that. There's other mitigations that could be being worked on too, right?
Yeah, I don't want to like grab the mic too much, but if we're discussing, right, one thing I would like to point out, and most people have seen it, but the city's just talking about phase 1 right now, and this is specific to the current proposal, right? And so they want like 8 probably at least $8 million to do phase 1, and they want $22 million to do phase 2. So this whole project that they're pitching right now is $30 million, and half of that at least is going to be taken from us. That's whoever lives near that they decide is going to have to pay for it. It's going to be taken from us directly. It's more money than they have in the bank, and to me that's just not fiscally responsible to put that on a lid. But I'm not saying we shouldn't do something. I'm just saying we need to find the right way as a community to decide how to pay for it and how much. And I want to see a better dialogue on that. That's my opinion, but there's a lot of money in this, and we're kind of breezing through it, and it really worries me.
I appreciate, ma'am, your comments. We got feedback. A number of people were really upset at some of the things that were said, the no lid, no HESCOs, no help. And that leaves people feeling fearful. And those that are strongly supporting HESCO, when we ask them, many of them say it's because I'm afraid there'll be nothing else. So we want to encourage those that feel fearful to grab a hold of that fear and let's talk it through, because there is life after no HESCO if that's what happens. And I know some folks on Emily Way, one woman just said she's terrified that they'll be voted down and there won't be any protection from her. But I can't believe, with what I've seen as the community coming together, that there won't be something that we can attempt to do. So if fear is what's driving you, I encourage you to self-examine that and try to add facts to that equation so that you make a good decision. I have to say I agree with Sam. 30 million, add another 20 and you've got a levy. And at the end of 7 years, all you have for $30 million is a pile of sand. And a lot of aggravation for people on the river that sacrifice their home, their view, their privacy. Now, maybe it will keep us safe, but the problem that I have is that there hasn't been the transparency that we need to the questions that we've asked, and there's some really good, legitimate ones. And again, we're not saying we're 100%, I'm not saying I'm against it, but when I can't get answers to questions that are very legitimate, it's very concerning. And the accelerated time frame for this makes it hard for us to regroup and talk and decide and make wise decisions. So it's good to be observant of how things are communicated and what that may or may not mean.
Any other HESCO specific questions that anybody wants to ask?
So for phase 1, they say we owe, some residents $8,000 to $50,000. If that phase 1 fails, do we get our money back? It feels like this is a big gamble, and that's the problem I have with it. I think they would work, but they're supposedly only very temporary, not 10 years temporary, and so that's what I'm a little worried about too.
So that question about would we get our money back, I feel like that's one of those questions that needs to be asked, and we need a written response on. And we need to post it out there so everybody knows it. And Sam's shaking his head no, because I don't think we would get our money back. Yeah.
I don't know if anyone here has the expertise to answer this question, but for $8 million, how much could the bank be built up where the water came in? How much bank improvement could be done with, you know, rocks and so on along the river, instead of HESCO barriers, a more permanent, like, improvement of the river to prevent at least the flood we had and maybe a little bit higher?
I don't have the technical knowledge to answer that one, but I can share that the height and width that they're planning to build the HESCO barriers is already, a lot of the homeowners are not happy about that, right? You know, they're losing their yard, they're gonna lose their view, and it's gonna be pretty impactful. So initially, when it was presented out, the city had a real favorable response because the homeowners were like, yes, we can do this for our community. A lot of them felt that way. And then as we heard about the lid and how wide it was gonna have to be, because it kind of changed and evolved, there's been a lot less favorable sentiment. So to your question, and could an actual physical, you know, embankment be built? Probably. Would it be better received? I don't know.
The draft agreement is very concerning for me as a homeowner on the river. It says it's a 10-year requirement, or that they, you know, and that the city waives everything. So it's really concerning who's responsible for any damage to my property, the erosion that's going to occur, and I live in an area that wasn't breached. So it's unlikely that it will, but I will still, probably water will come up now because it will probably drive water into my yard. That's okay, we're doing it for the community, but there's just so much we can really handle with this commitment that we're making.
Listen and see if I get it right. The HESCO barriers are 5 feet in front, 5 feet behind on a 10-foot pad.
3 foot wide and 4 foot tall.
But there's a 5-foot section on each side. And then on a 10-foot pad. And that's in your backyard. Some homes, it's right up near the home, like as close as 4 feet. Fences come down, decks come down, greenhouses come down, and they have the right to come in and a road, she's saying, to get in and out. So it's not a small commitment at all. This is where writing your assembly person matters. As a group, we have met with the assembly members privately, you know, in just individual meetings, talking to them about our group and our concerns. And we could do a letter where everyone signed us, a letter that says this is our position, but they're impressed, and it does get their attention when they hear from you. So I encourage you, it doesn't have to be long, share your story, share how you feel, and state what you're opposed to and why. They really do listen, and as hard as it is to show up on December 16th, I would like to see us pack the chambers and have something to say. And even if we decide we have 10 subjects to cover and you take this one and you take this one, because we only have so much time to talk, that we cover the subjects that are important and that they hear from us in a loud, very clear way, whatever our message is. And if you don't agree with me, I still welcome you to stand up and give your opinion. We just need to speak up.
Okay, we'll take this one and then we'll come to Zoom.
Okay, so wasn't this the week that we were supposed to get the updated inundation map so you could see what it means for individual properties?
Do you want me to address that? So the question was, wasn't FEMA supposed to deliver new inundation maps sometime this week? And that was what we had heard, and we have, I'm going to be purposely vague here, but we have received some information that FEMA has not delivered those and will not be delivering them because the city has, what's it called, an RFP, or they have somebody working on the inundation maps, and so they don't want to see the FEMA ones. From what we understand, they just want to go forward with their contract. So. I'm not making it up. That's the information I have. I'm sorry I can't share the source. It's just, that's what I have. Yep.
Sorry to jump away from the HESCO barriers, but I wonder how we can leverage the governor Because when Fairbanks flooded in 67, they built the levee in 68. Now, I know in 57 years, the red tape has quadrupled, multiple times, and red tape is still there. But when a disaster is declared, we ought to be able to cut through that red tape, leverage the governor, and have him start on the levee. That's where we need to go. If we have to put the HESCO barriers in for a stopgap until the levee's built, then we ought to do something along those lines too, but we need to get that paperwork and the red tape cut down so that we can start the levee. That seems like the best solution.
I love it. I want to do it. I applaud it. Help me do it. Send us an email to info@juneaufsa.org and help us do it. All right? Alyssa, you ready for some questions?
Yes, if you actually want to, you can go to the laptop. Oh. Since I have 3 computers running, you go to my laptop, and it'll show you the chat. You can scroll, there's some comments, but I think
I see if, when is the next assembly meeting about the HESCO and LID? I can't scroll down. I don't know how to work your laptop, Alyssa, sorry. The next assembly meeting is the one on the 16th. Yep, and that's for the LID. And I will emphasize what Debbie said earlier, that that's the last opportunity for the assembly members to ask for amendments. That word ask is really important. They have to ask the city manager for those amendments. So one of the things I noticed at the last assembly meeting when I was listening in is a lot of questions that were proposed and no real asks. So as I reach out to the assembly in the near future, one of the things that I'm going to request is please ask. Make sure it is an ask. Hey, we would like for you to provide this information. We would like for you to come back with this. We would like to know what this would cost. Make sure that it's an ask and not just a question.
All right. So what I have, there was a comment here when we first started talking about the LID. It said, I believe the city manager was referencing that if the LID fails, it may impact the city's ability to apply for or receive federal funding for phase 2 of the HESCO project. Any comments?
Go ahead, Debbie.
So we heard that comment and we ran with it, and we couldn't track down anyone who could support that. We talked to congressional delegation and talked to the governor's office, talked with our local representatives, and no one could see a direct link as to why that would be said, unless it's just an idea. It shouldn't directly affect it, except that it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good to go to your congressional delegation and not have the support of your community. And so maybe that's what it's about.
Another comment is CBJ isn't answering questions because they don't have them. Another question, will JFSA be presenting our concerns at the assembly meetings? I think we kind of covered that, I don't know.
We will definitely do our best to present your concerns, but there is a time limit factor, right? So you're only allowed to speak for 2 minutes, which is why we've kind of suggested that if you want to submit your concerns and have them presented by JFSA, we will prepare them in advance, and hopefully we can get enough people come and sign up to speak so that, Debbie can get up there and read 2 minutes worth, and then when her turn is up, I can come up after her and start reading from where she left off, right? And we can get the whole thing done. Not only do we in the past that we've been at those assembly meetings, have we just spoken, but everything we've spoken and what we weren't able to get out, we have sent in to the city as well and to the assembly. So hope that answers that question.
Another comment, we are all going to have to make sacrifices to keep our community and neighbors safe. Presenting ideas is great, but in reality, we need to take immediate action. There is individual assistance funding from FEMA/SBA now, but households need to apply in the next 2 weeks to access it. Another one here. Assembly meeting testimony is usually limited to 2 minutes. All citizens can email the assembly at boroughAssembly@juneau.org, and I'd suggest if you have opinions about this ordinance, now is the time. And then a question, can access to FEMA funding and/or SBA loans be extended as our city figures out the plan and cost to homeowners so homeowners can apply for assistance if they have costs for mitigation efforts?
Did you catch all the question?
Oh, not really.
You want to repeat it, Alyssa? Sure. Basically, can FEMA be extended?
So the deadline, physical damage deadline for SBA is December 16th. However, we have a grace period. So we're going to allow a period of time, a month or two after that time for Juneau residents to submit applications. Once you've submitted your application, you could say at any time, stop, I'm not ready to move forward, and we'll give you 6 months to come back to us and say, now I'm ready. So once you submit an application, you're going to get 6 months built into that. Also, once you get an application that's approved, you could come back to SBA and say, you gave me a loan for $10,000, now I need more money. So you have 2 years once you get that loan approval to ask for an increase in the funding.
Sure. So our deadline to apply is December 16th. People can register late, provide a reason, and usually we will grant that reason. You know, our program is limited to, essential repairs. We have certain parameters. Our program goes up to $43,600 for home repair, $43,600 for other needs assistance, which is personal property mainly, and temporary housing for up to 18 months. So there are limitations to our programs, and I would just say this, that I do want everyone to apply, even if they don't feel like they were much affected. They might have gotten funds from insurance. They might feel they're whole. They might have funding from the state. They may worry that they're going to take something from someone else. You are not. But just avail yourselves of every opportunity to receive the maximum amount of FEMA funding you can. And if you are eligible, then we will provide those funds, and we will help you navigate through that process for up to 18 months. That's April 10th, 2025, to get appeals in. And please share this with your neighbors. I've heard some people say, I'm whole, I got enough. There may be money on the table. I'm just going to say it bluntly like that. That may come in handy for other needs that you are facing. So I hope I answered that. So there's no FEMA individual assistance money for this purpose, for those HESCO barriers. That's very clear. What the state and city decide to do for that hazard mitigation grant program, not in my lane, but that's a different scenario.
Can I just answer this? Right, the SBA loan does not cover the HESCO barriers because they're considered a temporary mitigation measure, and they're not covered within our program.
She also wanted to know
The interest rate, is that what you said? So the interest rate for the SBA loan is 2.813% for homeowners, 4% for business owners. If you have a credit score of above 800, there's a chance you might get the higher interest rate loan at 5.625. However, a lot of the loan officers have been waiving that, given a hardship. And so even if you have a credit score above 800, you're getting the lower interest rate.
All right, anything else to the room? I'm going to open it back up for the room.
Yeah, I'm curious what the city is going to assess my property at next April. Last year it was $507,000. If I can sell my house for that, I'll be happy to sell and move and let somebody else worry about it. But in all reality, I think my house right now is worth zero. I don't think I could sell it. And I don't know if, how many property owners are going to accept last year's assessment as a true assessment. That is not a true assessment. And if they're going to charge me $8,000 to put in HESCO barriers, I'd like to see my property values reduced enough that it'll more than cover that $8,000.
You bring up a great point, because not only do we pay $8,000 for the lid, we pay our property taxes and all the other taxes as well. So it's almost like we pay for it in 3 different ways, But yeah, I hear you. Anything else from the room?
Part of what we wanted to accomplish tonight was to talk about this and to educate ourselves about things we didn't know about. The city asked us to write to our congressional delegation, and we were going to have a letter writing campaign on Sunday, but it got canceled because of the snow. But it actually, as we think about it, we really realize that writing a letter before you have the knowledge isn't really the best idea. So it made sense to talk tonight, and hopefully people on Zoom are listening and thinking and writing what is true to them. And so if I can take a minute to talk about that. Your delegation, and I've spoken to the top staffers from Murkowski and Sullivan, they want to hear your story. I said, if we do a petition, they said, no. They want to hear your story. Personal, it matters to them. You are their constituent, and when they hear that, it really has an impact. They need to hear your needs. And this is the chance to ask for full funding. Whether you like the HESCOs and the LAED or not, you could ask for that, and that at least covers it. We have some particular email addresses that are different than what was originally distributed. I have this at the back, and you can take it. It is direct emails to our staffers. They're waiting to hear from you. This is your chance to weigh in on what you want to see happen. And they have said, ask us for something. Tell us what you're needing. Tell us what you're wanting. I'd like a hero like Fairbanks had. I'd like to see a levee go in personally. I'd like to see a solution, a long-term solution. Think about it yourself and ask. If you don't put your need and your request in writing, they don't know. They don't hear. They just base it on the general consensus or what they hear from their government. So I can't urge enough that go home tonight and pen a letter and email it out, because that's the power that we have as our voice, whatever it may be.
Thanks. I just had I don't really expect an answer on this. For the long-term solution, what does the funding look like for that? Like, I know with the LIDs, it's like a 50-50 split for these 2 phases. Is the hope for the long-term solution that there's a significant amount of federal funding? And okay, that's not like a thing that could go into an LID where we have to split $100 million between 466 houses. Okay, cool. I have one other comment, if that's okay. Thinking about the assembly meetings and people giving testimony and providing their input, I do think it's really important. I think it's really important that they hear from a lot of people. Something that I also think is really important is that they hear a unified message as many times as possible, that they hear the same thing from however many people we can get there. And I wonder if it's within the power of this group to essentially create like a form, or not a form, but just like a template where you can lay out those key messages. So for people that do want to testify, they can look at this printout, know that it's about 2 minutes, go and say what they need to say. It's the message that they want to get across. It has the ask that you want, because more often than not, the assembly is not ever asking anybody any questions after they give their testimony. They listen to it and you leave, and then they probably forget about it. But if they hear the same thing from 80 different people for 2 hours over the night, that is probably going to make more of an impact than I think kind of some of what goes on there now. Thanks.
No, it's a great contribution. Definitely something we can work on. We'll send it out via email. But we need some feedback on it as well. If you're like, I don't want to speak to this point, I don't think this one should be in there, we need that feedback because we're trying to represent you. So not just our opinions. So I love it. We'll work on it. Anything else? I'm coming.
I just have one concern about it, and that is I hope that if you're for HESCO or you're not for HESCO, I just hope it doesn't divide us. Like, I'm real worried about that. Like, I know we all want the long term. That's something that we can all say. But I'm real nervous about that.
I'm going to speak honestly. I echo that sentiment. You know, it's hard for me to get up here and tell you what I know about those failures and those HESCO failures and not be afraid that people are going to respond negatively to that because I'm just trying to provide information. I definitely don't want it to divide us, but I look at the way the community came together after this flood and I go, wow, if we can do that after the event, why can't we get our act together and do that before the event, right? We know potentially when it's going to come. Let's put together a good plan, make sure we get community volunteers, and go help people do their own personal mitigations, right? I'm not asking people to take on the liability for that, you know. Don't hang the plastic, don't set the sandbag, but like help get the sandbags to their house, help get them filled, you know. The possibilities are endless for what we could do if we come together on it, right? So is there a way to fight that next flood without the HESCOs? I firmly believe so. Could the city request that the National Guard be deployed in advance? It might be a possibility, right? Could they come and help distribute sandbags and load them and get them at least on the street or at the end of people's driveways where they need them? Probably. Could we have a better warning system put in place? A siren, better notifications? Could we have CBJ employees or volunteers stationed along the river to monitor it and provide updates? I mean, there's the ideas we can come up with just in a room like this are kind of endless, right? And then it just has to be put on paper and implemented. So that's where I'm at a loss because that's where I need help. I need your advice, your input, and as a group, then we need to have a plan to move that idea forward. So that's as transparent as I can be on it.
One of the things we recognized in just the first beginning meetings is that the city was in over their head as far as this is a big problem. So we decided we wanted to be proactive. We weren't going to go and complain. We were going to look at the problems and we were going to solve them. So this last outburst that happened, some of you may have heard this already, but we stationed people along the river and we were texting all night long because people were anxious. We didn't call the city and say, why aren't you doing this? We just took care of it. And I think that same spirit could exist if the HESCOs are voted down. I don't know that, I can't predict how it's going to be. I don't know if it'll be a bigger flood than we had, but I have confidence in the people that I've gotten to know and the neighbors that I've met that I never knew were next door that are wonderful. And I share your concern. I don't want this to divide us either. I know someone who watched a wall of water come towards her house, and she's so scared. And she wants those HESCOs in because she feels it'll make her safe. I have hesitation and I have reservations myself personally. But that doesn't mean we can't come together, whatever the decision, together as a community, we can do this. And I think that's the non-fear approach and the confidence that I just want to testify I've seen in the people I've met. We're a pretty strong, powerful, go-get-'em kind of group. And in all shapes and sizes and with all infirmities, as you can see with me, it doesn't matter. We can all make a difference. And I feel really optimistic that we can do this together.
Anybody have anything else they want to discuss? Any other topics? What you got? Oh, man. The message to CBJ should be related to the funding of the ordinance specifically because that's what this ordinance is about. Somebody says, well, all those answers don't actually save our homes. My home had 3 feet of water. I can't read it if you're moving it. Alarms and sandbags, I don't think would make enough difference. Yeah, that's a real possibility. But there's a lot of ideas about these HESCOs about, well, what if they weren't just deployed along the riverbank? What if they were used to cordon off streets and make sure the water couldn't flow through neighborhoods in the same way? I mean, there's a lot of out-of-the-box thinking that community members have come up with and asked questions about that may not be fully explored. I'm not telling you that I have the solutions. I'm just regurgitating information and presenting ideas to you. I'm really looking for feedback and how to go forward with it. So, is there another one, Alyssa? One thing people should consider is spreading awareness outside the impacted properties, inform the community of the lid to get feedback to the assembly. That was direct feedback from the city to us as well about providing feedback about the lid. You better talk to your neighbors and your friends and everybody that live elsewhere in Juneau. If they are getting feedback from the rest of the community that says, hey, this cost should be shared equally amongst the community, that's a very loud voice for them. So anybody outside of the lid area that would provide that kind of response to the assembly, they have said that that would be noted. What else? Those are comments, right? Not questions? Okay. Talk about the lid? Yeah, you want to talk about it?
So it's a local improvement district, and the difference in opinion is that it should be an improvement. It should be a lights going in the street or a sidewalk, and that what has been suggested is an emergency measure. That's the position of the people who oppose the lid and oppose it in principle. I don't know, those that support it say it's an emergency measure and it should be allowed. There are certainly some property owners along the river that have told me, no way, no how, tell them to call my lawyer, I'm not gonna let them on my property. So I don't know if the situations will become eminent domain and will be a problem for the city. It's been discussed some in meetings. And again, the pros and cons of that is that I think the city represented that they thought that was a method they could use if they had to. But it's also been said that eminent domain should be for the public use, and that didn't apply to that situation. So there's pros and cons, and I'm trying to just pass information on to help you evaluate. In principle, is it concerning to put something in like this and set a precedence? Is it appropriate or not? Those are the questions to ask.
I go back to the preparedness. That's where my mind goes 100% of the time. Because if we put all our faith in this, let's say the lid passes and the HESCOs start putting up, and then there's a problem, right? They don't work as they expected. They can't fill them as quick as they thought. They didn't have enough space. They can't go as high. What then? I don't want to see the community, the people that were flooded, have not had time to prepare for other mitigation strategies because they put all their faith in the HESCOs. So I'm not against the HESCOs. I'm saying ask the right questions. Did you have something? No. Yeah, you're getting. All right. Yeah. Hang on.
My question is there any legal responsibility of the assembly to the community as a whole, and especially to the people that flooded? Does anyone in the group have or know of or have attorneys who are relatives or something that we could find out? What are the CBJ's legal responsibilities?
So your question is to the group, our group, does anybody have legal experience or an attorney that could help provide guidance on this stuff?
Just even off the record.
Yeah, so I'll say if anybody knows that person, is that person, or wants to try and pursue that, I would say email us at info@junofsa.org.
Does anybody know now? Do they have legal responsibility to the community?
It's not helpful, but my neighbor has reached out and been denied by every single lawyer they've reached out to deal with this issue. And it's related to how complex, I'm going to air quotes, eminent domain can become, and the fact that it's one or more, but it's not quite a class action lawsuit. No action has been firmly taken yet, so nothing can truly be challenged. So until a plan is set in motion or action is taken or property damaged, no remedy can be sought short of like a restraining order or something like that. But we weren't able to get lawyers that wanted to deal with it. Now, that being said, I haven't called the Alaskan Bar or tried to get a lawyer directly because I don't have the money. So
I will tell you in my research about where these HESCOs have had challenges before, one of them is in Davenport, Iowa, and 5 years later, their city is still facing lawsuits from that failure, so. Sorry, I should give you the mic.
In response to you, young man, that made that comment about coming up with some points, is there any, does anyone want to state something and see if we're all in agreement on it? Do you?
How do you feel about X? Have people put their hands up?
Well, I think the best alternative and the fastest one would be the levee that went around the lake and then putting the thing in right at the river that controlled the water outflow. That's the best solution there is for this whole situation.
Thanks for that. Let's do a show of hands on that. Is everybody sold on that as a best long-term solution? You suggested that the flood control structure at the lake and at the river there is the best long-term solution to pursue and go after that. That's pretty much unanimous consent in the room, so. Well, I mean, how do you want to ask that question for short-term solutions? I don't want to ask who was for, who wants. Is $30 million too much to spend on a temporary solution? Everybody's in agreement on that? Yeah. We're not trying to put people on the spot. Just so you know, if you do that survey, it's pretty anonymous, as in, like, only the people that created the survey can view the specific individual results, and we are not sharing who says what. We are just sharing the metrics when we talk about those survey results, so.
Well, there's been several comments, so I'm offended by some of the like all or nothing language that's being used by the city. So do other people feel that that is inappropriate? Or, like, there's too much of that, like either you're with us or you get nothing? Like, do we have consensus that that needs to change? Okay. So I think that could be one of the big take-back messages. That's got to change because I don't feel the engagement from that dialogue.
Alyssa, we got questions up here, or are these comments? Can somebody speak to mitigation loans? I want to lift my house, my home, but it's cost prohibitive. Will SBA help me pay for lifting my home? And the answer to that has been no. So not without existing damage. If you had existing damage, then you can get an SBA loan to help pay for that. What extent of damage is necessary? If my crawl space flooded, can I get enough assistance to help me raise my home?
So I think if the crawl space is flooded, do an SBA application and get that crawl space damage, because no one knows if that crawl space damage is going to morph into something more substantial a month or 2 or 3 months or 5 months down the road.
So the response to that is apply for the SBA loan because you don't know if that damage was localized to the crawl space. It could potentially expand into other areas. Foundation damages.
You might have to redo your foundation and then incorporating that process of fixing the foundation, you could do the lifting of the house.
So if you had to incorporate fix to the foundation, it might be an avenue to get the funding for lifting the house.
If you have that crawl space damage and it's limited to the crawl space damage and get a loan for $5,000, say, and that's all, then SBA is going to give you that $5,000, and that's not going to be enough, obviously, to lift your house. You'll get 20% on top of that $5,000, but that's going to be the extent of it.
How about a show of hands if you think that, it just escaped my little brain. Oh, I've had a moment. It's about the lid.
We're going to revisit that one. One other thing I want to share is another one of the long-term solution that was presented was straightening the bends in the river. And we've gotten a lot of good information on that we're trying to get consolidated and posted to the website. That one seems like it's kind of roadblocked by a couple of things, one of which is permitting, which every solution has that roadblock. Another one is access to that peninsula and where the material would go. So getting the equipment in there and getting the material that's being removed out is one of the challenges that's come up. It's also quite costly from what the initial estimates are. I don't remember the figure off the top of my head. 24 million? Yeah. So if you're at 24 million, it doesn't seem like it's a big lift to go to that flood control structure. So
I haven't gotten a response back from the city assembly yet, but I did suggest to them that if they wanted to dredge the river, they could put the material into that old oxbow and create new land there. So that would be a benefit to the city, and it'd be something to do with that material that comes out of the river.
see, I just love those ideas because they're so like, I didn't think of that, you know? And yeah, they're innovative, but it's like a who knows? What's the possibilities? I like it.
It may not be a popular thing, but I feel bad for the 4 people that have to pay the $50,000, and I really think that the city should make it equal across to all of us. I mean, I couldn't. I'm not one of the 50, but I couldn't imagine trying to pay that off. And, huh? Well, 58. Yeah.
So for the riverbank stabilization at 50,000, that's an area where SBA could potentially lend those 4 residents. So those 4 residents that are being charged 50,000 for the riverbank stabilization, that's an area where SBA potentially can provide a loan to them.
Oh, cool. Good to know. Yeah.
Say again? Right. So the alternative is you have the 50,000 from SBA at 2.813, or the assessment by the state, the city 10 years at, I think it's 4.78, something like that. Which one? So once you, if you have your property damaged from this flooding, as I mentioned, SBA is going to provide another 20% on top of that damaged amount. So say it's $100,000, 20%, you'd get another $20,000. So you could use that $20,000 for any mitigation as it relates to, you know, sump pumps, retaining wall, riprap, whatever it is you're going to do. It doesn't have to be exclusively for lifting your house.
Having been part of the previous project in 2008 for doing the riprap for all the properties, several of these people that are assessed $50,000 repeatedly chose not to do it because either they thought they didn't want to do it and spend the money and they were going to sue the city. And so I'm not too concerned about the $50,000. They should have done it before. If they choose not to do it and the city overrides them, you know, that's not trying to divide people, but I know people that have that problem and they're going to get a steal, because if they were participating in the previous exercise, they would have to pay $80,000. So we are subsidizing them to the tune of $30,000.
Thank you. All right, back to Debbie.
Could I get a show of hands of those who think the LID is an
The question was, show of hands for who thinks the LID is an emergency measure and not an improvement. Emergency measure, not an improvement. So it's everybody in the room.
Favor of and opposed to. So who's in favor of the LID? Who's opposed to the LID? Wow.
Any other questions? Who's in favor of the HESCOs? You want me to ask that one? All right, so show of hands. Who's in favor of the HESCOs? Nobody in the room. Yes. How many people are undecided? About half. So, yeah, what information would you want? I have those same questions. Yep. I don't know why I'm standing here and not letting you use the mic. I'm sorry. I got excited about what you were saying. Let me see if I can paraphrase it back so everybody on Zoom can hear it too. But basically, you need more information, and one of your primary concerns is the erosion. They haven't addressed how they're going to mitigate the erosion impacts to the HESCOs. Is that correct? See if I can get to you.
So I'm a homeowner, and I'm going to have these HESCO barriers. What do I do if I need to improve my bank because if something's happening and I don't have any recourse? The HESCO barriers are out there. We just spent $90,000 reinforcing our bank. What if something happens in the next 10 years? I really feel stuck. That's my concern. I don't know.
I don't have answers to that.
So those are legitimate questions. If you don't get those questions answered, and tonight you had to vote, with the limited answers you've got, where do you land? That's what I would be interested. So for those of you who want more information, if you couldn't get more information, what would you decide?
So we got people that are saying no. I'll share a few more things that are rattling around in my head if you want to hear them about some of the concerns that I have with those HESCOs, if you think that's pertinent. I see a few nods.
Real quick, swear. So one of the things that the city says they're doing is the hydrodynamic or some hydro study for the HESCOs themselves, but they haven't done it yet. And yeah, exactly. So I think that's really important, and I would encourage everyone to say that study has to reinforce that this will work. Because if it comes back and it doesn't, we still need to find a solution. And I think that should be our end goal, is finding a workable solution and a temporary one. If the model comes back negative, we don't need to go back to square one. We need to just adapt. And I really hope that they can see that.
No, you're perfect. Building off of that, a lot of people shared with me that when we were talking about mitigation strategies, that they don't want to push water into their neighbor's home, right? And where's the guarantee that we're not going to send all of this water downstream to impact our neighbors south of River Court? So that's, yep. In the non-existent study, that's the comment we have in the room.
In a meeting at Thunder Mountain High School, the Army Corps that were there said, or maybe it was the city council, maybe it was an assembly meeting, I take it back. It was noted that the first phase would be completed and the second phase would be beginning before they would even have done a downstream unintentional consequences.
I mean, one of the things that floats around in my head is why can we install these without any studies, but we can't install them to form a temporary levee up at the lake with them? I mean, we could repurpose the HESCOs up there and build this flood control structure to a degree, right? Isn't that a possibility? How come we don't have to study how this is going to impact wildlife, right? I mean, you put up a 10-foot barrier, what's that going to do to the animals that are constantly traveling through people's backyards, and bears and birds and everything else, and deer? Yeah, I mean, well, that, and then also, what about security? You know, like, I have a very security focus. You put up that wall, I can no longer effectively see my backyard, so who can move along that barrier without being seen? You know, like, there's a lot of things. How are they going to be filled? You know, that's another question. Who's going to be responsible to fill them? Who's going to be responsible to monitor that crew that's filling them? In my research, I have seen that a lot of the failures are attributed to how they were filled and improper fill techniques. So it seems like that's a pretty important detail to hammer out. I don't know. This is just the things that are floating around. Anybody want to respond? Got another question?
Can we have a vote and see how many people agree with what you just said, that all of those things ought to be presented in one of the 2-minute little blurbs that we have? Because I agree with, that's all great stuff to bring up, and it should be done in front of the assembly.
Quick show of hands of support for that. That's unanimous in the room. Anybody have any other questions they think should be asked and raised? Yeah. So the HESCO salesman, and I say that as a salesman because that's how everybody's expressed that he came across. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but that's he's got a sale. So he says that the geotextile fabric won't degrade as fast because we don't have as much sunlight. So that's what keeps the sand in the barriers. They say that the steel, that the galvanized metal or something, I don't remember what the standard is for it, is protected from saltwater corrosion. I mean, I'm like you guys. My vehicles rust faster. I get rust on my boat, you know, like my trailer. I don't know how well that's going to play out, but it seems like a concern. Yeah, the list goes on.
The challenge with the format of the assembly meeting is that it's a one-way communication. It's not a conversation. You can make public comment. You can write emails ahead of time, which maybe gives your assembly person a chance to think about your questions and present them. But I just have to prepare you that that's the frustration. It would be great if this wasn't so accelerated and there was time to make comment and time for them to consider it and come back next time. But I don't know that that's going to exist this time. So it's pretty quick. Can I just ask, if the HESCOs fail, how confident are you that we'll be okay? And so I'm trying to measure the fear level. If the HESCOs fail, are you afraid for the outcome? Show of hands. Okay, so, fair amount. If they pass, would you feel less afraid? Show of hands. So there is some confidence in the HESCOs themselves. Is that correct to say? Did I word it wrong?
Yeah, so the consensus in the room is that even if it was funded, there's not a lot of confidence. Am I saying that correctly? Yeah, okay.
I talked to that HESCO salesman, and well, I've listened to them say that they're very sure that those things will last for 10 years here in Juneau. Why don't they put a warranty on them for 10 years?
So yeah, I don't know about that one, but apparently HESCO can't be held liable, nor can the Army Corps of Engineers, is what seems to be occurring with the other areas that have failed. If you want to check them out on YouTube, there's failures in Davenport, Iowa, and Burlington, Iowa, and Chinle, Arizona. The Chinle, Arizona one is interesting to me because information is presented by Flood Defense Group, which is Keith Anderson's group. And so when he was asked at the assembly meeting by Deputy Mayor Greg Smith whether or not he was aware of any failures, If you spin it, you could say it was a success, but the HESCOs, when you look at them, they're tipped over into a sandy, because they were put on sand, so they're tipped over and emptied out by the flooding by the river, and the river is moving at a fractional margin of what we experienced. So I struggle with that. Nope. Nope. There's no base. There's no bottom. There's 4 inches of fabric that wrap around underneath the bottom of the HESCO, and that's it. They're designed to be able to be lifted off, and I'm going to link a video to our YouTube channel that shows them being lifted, because the sand can just pour out the bottom then. So once they start to tip, there's nothing that's holding the sand inside of it. Yeah. It's not even a bag. It's not even like the super sacks. There is no bottom to it. So one of the failures in, sorry, I'll come to you, Alyssa. One of the failures in Davenport, on the video, they're saying it seems to be saturation is why it failed, because it got too saturated and was able to just be washed out. Well, we live in a rainy environment. You don't think they're going to be saturated? I mean, maybe. Alyssa, do you have a question you want me to ask? Is there federal programs that can help all Valley folks raise their homes, like with HUD? Anybody have any knowledge of that one? Sam?
So I'm not going to speak for the federal agencies. I'm just going to say that there are multiple grant programs where municipalities or other entities can put forward mitigation and flood control projects. And I'm going to say a few words, hopefully I get them right. There's like the BRIC program, which is like improvements. Then there's like resiliency programs. All of those things can factor into that, but it has to be pursued by somebody representing all of us and having a plan and being willing to put the money forward. Then when they compete nationally against all these different places, they're like, okay, we chose the following projects and they're going to be pursued, and they're like a 75-25, where 75% is paid for federally and 25% is paid for locally. And then they move forward and the money pays out as the program has it, which means you might spend money that you don't have as you wait for the federal funding to come through. So that makes people very cagey on using these programs, but they do exist. I would say if you have questions about that, contact the Alaska State people. They're the ones who are primarily manage those programs or have our connection to those programs. So Harmony Curtis comes to mind. She's our state floodplain manager, and they have several handouts that kind of talk about those different programs. But they're all different, and you actually have to have something in and an application and go through that, and it's awarded on a year-by-year basis.
So I see Richard on there reminding me to say where they've succeeded. They have been successful. They've been used in flood mitigation, the HESCOs have. They're used up and down the Mississippi River. And I'm trying to really present data that I think is meaningful to us here in Juneau, and look for something that's comparative. I am not an expert in this. Do your own research. Vet what I'm giving you, right? But where they've been successful, it seems like they've been placed on roadways, so big, heavy foundations. They're placed 3, 4, sometimes 5 deep, 2 or 3 layers, 2 or 3 deep on top of that first layer. There's plastic that's draped over them, down and onto the ground and held down by sandbags. And even with all of that, a couple of those failures have been with those measures in place. And they, like I said, attributed it to saturation or improper placement, or that they slid because they were in place too long. So yeah, could they be effective? I think they really could. But my question is do we have a strong enough plan for how they're going to be put in place, and all of the details that we've already discussed? So I don't want to discredit them. They have their measures that they're effective for. Oh, sorry, I don't want to skip the Zoom, folks. Highlight it for me. I feel confident in the barriers and the city. I feel like the in-room chat, can you make that bigger? Is a little taken over, and we're not looking at reality that we do need to trust government who has access to funding and actually do something. And the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers that has done this for decades is far more, I can't tell what that word is, flood solutions, in far more extreme flood solutions than what they recommend, and I trust their opinion. You got another one? Would the city have to lead that effort for elevation? Yes, the answer is yes for that. We can dream up ideas all we want, but the reality is current funding we have is for HESCO barriers. That's an immediate solution for 500 homes and thousands of people. Okay, well, to our Zoom audience, hopefully I'm reflecting your feedback appropriately. What else we got?
Yeah, off topic here. I was wondering if the survey that Dow Engineering was doing a month or so ago, if that's been published.
To my knowledge, the survey that Dow Engineering did has at last update not been provided to the city yet. They were still working on some changes to the data, was what I had last heard, or some revisions. I haven't checked on it in probably 3 weeks. Doesn't sound like I can get access to it either way because I didn't pay for it. So there would have to pursue some other method to get that. I believe the city did. It might have been DOT. I'm not 100%. Anybody else?
Do you know if the city has put forth a flood mitigation plan yet? I know they've been
That they have currently, Debbie, correct me if I'm wrong, but that is what they put the assembly allocated 100,000 or 150,000 for, and they have a contractor that's working on that plan. I think that's right. Yeah, no, they don't. They do not have one. No, we've been out of date since 2014. The question was, do we have a current hazard mitigation plan? And the answer is no. The city has been out of date since 2014. That's the information that we've been provided. What can we do for you guys? So how to collect that data is kind of difficult, I'm going to be honest. We can try and pull it out of this meeting, but the city doesn't accept it if we don't really have names tied to it. Yeah, I'm getting there. Hang on. Can we give you a form of questions? Start that question over and ask it on the mic.
Can you make up and provide via the website a form I can print out and everybody else can print out that has these key points in it, like what we talked about tonight when everybody raised their hands for this or that, so that we could say, this is the item that I agree with. This is the other item I agree with. This one I don't agree with. But here's where I stand, Assembly, and now you know.
That kind of goes back to the question the gentleman in the front row here asked earlier. I think you suggested having examples of the letters, and so we can work on that. Yes. All right, so let me repeat that for our Zoom folks. The suggestion was made that we should host a meeting and request the city to attend, and then ask our questions of the city there.
It'd be nice to have a town hall meeting like that before the public comment.
So the public comment that you're speaking of is the 16th, right? And so to arrange a town hall meeting, we'll try. We'll try. What else? Yeah, he's out for medical. So I don't have a date for when he's going to return. He was unofficially our liaison. The assembly, I believe, is considering whether or not they want to name somebody else, have somebody attend. We've just been reaching out to the assembly members directly, and I compliment them. But at least 5 of them took over an hour, most of them 2 hours out of a Sunday or Saturday to meet with us on a last minute's notice. So I was kind of impressed by the response we got when we asked to sit down with them. The other thing we asked is, would you be willing to go on a little field trip and meet in the backyards of some of the homeowners that were impacted and do a little tour of the river, because I don't think a lot of them have been in that area or seen it. And so to better understand the erosion, better understand the soil conditions, we asked if they would be willing to do a field trip, and all of them said yes. So unfortunately it snowed and we haven't had time to arrange that yet. No. Only one that I'm aware of. She's not in the lid. No, she's not. I'm going to answer it. I'm going to answer honestly. I want to think about how I say my response. And first off, I have to be transparent on something. I'm not extremely civilly minded, right? This is the most I've ever been involved in anything city related, right? Which is a huge failure on my part, and probably many others, right? So I'm up against a huge learning curve. So when they met with us, I felt they were open. I felt they were transparent about how they felt individually. There definitely was a concern that we would try and quote them or use their remarks in a negative way, I guess, and I felt they listened. The responses, the questions they asked at the next meeting, I was very, very pleased with. You could tell that they had heard us and asked questions about it. I'm still learning about how the assembly works with the city manager, to be honest. And so that's why I go back to what's the difference between asking a question of the city manager or the city attorney versus asking for an amendment or for them to bring back additional information. Does that answer your question? You want to add to that?
The intent of the meeting was not to put them on the spot and say, where do you land? The intent of the meeting was to introduce ourselves, to talk about the people that we were trying to represent, to express our concerns, and to ask, hey, if this doesn't go through, not to complain, but we had ideas. And so we presented some alternate ideas. And we talked about the mill rate, a slight increase in that, and that's like a bomb going off for most people. So we had a conversation about that and a couple of different options if the LID didn't pass. And it was a good exchange, but we weren't there to pin them down. We were there to try to present ourselves and ask them to consider certain things. And I felt like they were very open to hear us.
Anything else? What else you guys got? Alyssa, anything else online? It feels like we're getting people all riled up against HESCO. I agree we need a long-term solution, but from working through red tape, in the lands before I know we can take years for sign-off and funding. Please arrange for the field trip prior to the December 16th meeting. We can try. We can try. I honestly, I got to be frank on this part. We need help. Like, we need additional volunteers. We need somebody that's like, yeah, hey, I'll be responsible for 3 assembly members and taking them around and showing them this, right? Because I got 2 small kids, and I got a home and a job and everything else to do too. So, you know, there's only so many of us, and we're trying to do a lot. And that's not me saying it as an excuse, but man, we need some help.
Here we go with show of hands again, but who would be willing tonight to go home and write their assembly person and tell them we want a town hall meeting before the next public comment? That's something anyone can do.
And you can bump them back to Juneau FSA. You can say, hey, we want you to arrange a meeting with Juneau FSA for a town hall meeting, and we'll make it happen. You know, we'll probably use this space again because it's the only one that's available to us that's large enough, that has a mic, has a way for us to present. So if somebody's got a better idea about a space, let us know. What else? On the website where you came in to register at, you can volunteer right on there, or you can complete the survey. There's opportunities to volunteer right there. So it's a huge help. Thank you. What other stuff you guys got? I'm hearing none. Should we close the meeting? Yes.
Cover the dismantling of those, say, 5-10 years down the road?
To be 100%, I was going to say no. For the installation or the dismantling? Okay, so we don't really know, because I was going to say no, Debbie's going to say yes. We'd have to go back and check the assembly meeting minutes to see what the answer was. I know that question has been asked, though. So his question was, is the lid going to cover the eventual removal cost of the HESCO barriers? And the response was that we were a little divided on whether or not we knew the answer.
Yeah, if you look at the documents, it is online, and I'm not going to say this is legal advice or whatever, like disclaimer. There's $25,000 allocated for each property that has the HESCO barriers for mitigation after they remove them. I don't think that was money for removal. That's money to repair your properties. To level it out with dirt or whatever. $25,000 per property with the HESCO barriers.
Did that one get heard? So you just jogged another one in my mind that's been rolling around in there. Is like, you come in and you put in all of that fill, that rock work to create a foundation to put these HESCO barriers on, right? You change the way people's yards drain. Fundamentally. I mean, so what happens if water starts pooling up in their yards? Now they have water in their crawl space or water runoff somewhere else. Like, all of those things, I think we gotta have a little bit of a plan for, at least discuss them, in my opinion. It's not a reason not to do it, it's just something to talk about.
I just want to say that's a really important point, because people don't want to sign those agreements unless they know for sure what they're signing. And they have to address many, many issues related to that. And so that in itself is a huge issue.
All right, anything else? Otherwise, I'm going to close it. We're over 2 hours, and I really appreciate y'all's time and attendance. I'm going to let Debbie wrap us up. Give Zoom 10 seconds. Copy. 10 seconds for Zoom.
In the LID packet, it did talk about a provision if it exceeded the costs expected. and that can be added on at the end. I believe that there was an amendment that might be put in that limits that, but as it reads now, it does say that if they, if they miscalculate at the end of the project or at the point they know they've miscalculated, it can be more.
So a big thank you to FEMA and SBA. Thanks for taking the time. Another evening. I mean, it's a tough situation to be TDY for the federal government because there's a lot of restrictions on what you can and cannot do. And so I just got to say thanks because that's a long time away from home. It's a big deal. Zoom? All right.
Yeah, no. So our next, yes, exactly. We have another meeting scheduled Thursday, January 9th. It can be posted on the webpage. And to those on Zoom, if they're still listening, it's hard to participate when you're not in the same room. But again, we're all a group, and we have different places that we land. But I want to kind of end us again on that note that we need to see it that way. And remember that we have a voice, and if you don't use it, things will be decided for you. Ask questions, speak up, write your assembly member, write them and ask for a town hall before December 16th. Go back to the back and grab the form that's been filled out that talks about writing to your congressional delegation, and it has very specific email addresses to mail your communication to. Those efforts mean more than you could imagine, and that's the power we have as a group, our voice. Thank you for taking time to come tonight. We really appreciate it.